The emergency beacon pierced through the silence of Alexander's workshop like a desperate scream. He looked up from the quantum drive he'd been calibrating, wiping grease from his hands as the proximity sensors flashed amber warnings across his displays. Something had crash-landed in Sector 7 of the asteroid mining station. "Emma, we've got incoming," Alexander called to his partner, who was deep in meditation in the station's observation dome. The young xenobiologist had been studying the strange energy readings they'd detected near the Kepler belt for weeks now. Emma's eyes snapped open, her auburn hair floating weightlessly around her shoulders. "Life signs?" "Faint, but—" Alexander paused, frowning at the readings. "This doesn't match any known species profile. We need to move." They suited up quickly, their magnetic boots clanking against the metal corridors as they made their way to the crash site. What they found defied every xenobiology textbook Emma had ever studied. A creature no larger than a house cat lay crumpled among the twisted remains of what appeared to be an organic vessel. Its scales shimmered between deep emerald and gold, and from its back sprouted two magnificent wings, or what remained of them. One wing hung at an impossible angle, its delicate membrane torn and bleeding a substance that seemed to absorb light itself. "My God," Emma whispered, kneeling beside the creature. "Alexander, look at the bone structure, the way the wings attach to the torso." "This is impossible," Alexander finished. "Dragons are mythology, Earth fairy tales." The creature's eyes fluttered open, ancient, intelligent amber orbs that seemed to hold the weight of millennia. It made a sound, half whimper, half musical trill, and Emma's universal translator crackled to life. "Help, please." Alexander felt something twist in his chest. He'd spent 15 years as a biomechanical engineer, specializing in prosthetics for species across the galaxy. He'd never encountered anything like this, but the basic principles remained the same. "We need to get it to the medical bay," he said, carefully scooping up the creature. It weighed almost nothing despite its obvious intelligence. "Those wings need immediate attention." Over the next 18 hours, Alexander worked with a precision that surprised even himself. The creature, who had introduced itself through Emma's translator as Spark of the Dying Light, had wing bones more complex than anything in known biology. They were hollow like a bird's, but reinforced with what appeared to be naturally occurring carbon nanotubes. "The membrane structure is fascinating," Emma observed, scanning tissue samples. "It's not just for flight, it's processing cosmic radiation, converting it to usable energy." "This creature doesn't just fly between planets, Alexander. It flies between stars." Alexander nodded grimly, working with microscopic precision to realign the shattered wing bones. He'd fabricated titanium polymer supports, threading them through the natural structure like an intricate lacework. The membrane repair proved even more challenging. He had to synthesize a biocompatible replacement using the creature's own cellular samples. "Why are you helping me?" Spark asked during one of his conscious moments, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Because you're hurt?" Alexander said simply, not looking up from his work. "And because everyone deserves to fly." Emma smiled at that. It was so typically Alexander. No grand philosophical statements, just simple human decency. 48 hours later, Spark flexed his repaired wings tentatively. The membrane rippled like liquid starlight, and the small dragon's eyes widened in wonder. I can feel the solar winds again," he whispered. "Human Alexander, your craft surpasses even the builders of my home realm." "Home realm?" Emma asked, but before Spark could answer, the station's sensors exploded into activity. Something massive had just dropped out of hyperspace. The view screen filled with a sight that made Emma's knees weak. A ship, no, a creature easily the size of a small moon hung in space before them. Its scales caught and reflected the light of distant stars, and wings that could have wrapped around Jupiter spread majestically across the void. "Oh," said Spark quietly, and for the first time he sounded embarrassed. "Mother found me." The communications array crackled with a voice that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. "Who dares harm the last prince of the void dragons?" Alexander and Emma exchanged glances. Emma cleared her throat and activated the comm system. No harm here," she said. "Actually, quite the opposite. Your prince had an accident." Our engineer repaired his wings. Silence stretched across space for what felt like eternity. Then impossibly, the massive dragon began to shrink. Reality seemed to fold in on itself until a figure materialized on their station. Humanoid, but clearly not human. with scales that shifted color like an oil slick, and eyes that held the depth of black holes. "You repaired my son's wings," the Dragon Queen said, her voice now containing merely the power to level mountains instead of stars. She examined Alexander's work with eyes that had witnessed the birth of galaxies. "Void dragon wing membrane cannot be replicated. It requires mastery of 17 different dimensional physics and materials that exist only in the spaces between atoms." Alexander shrugged. "I used what I had. Seemed to work okay." The Queen stared at him for a long moment, then threw back her head and laughed, a sound like solar flares dancing across creation. "Humans," she said, shaking her head in amazement. "My son, you have been blessed by the most audacious species in existence. They look at the impossible and say, 'Close enough.'" She turned to Alexander and Emma. "The void dragons have not forgotten kindness shown to our young. When the darkness between stars grows hungry and the old enemies wake from their slumber, humanity shall have allies who remember." As Spark prepared to leave with his mother, he paused beside Alexander. "Why did you really help me?" he asked again. Alexander thought for a moment, watching through the viewport as distant stars wheeled in their ancient dance. "Because that's what humans do," he said finally. "We fix things that are broken. We help those who need help, and we never ever let anyone tell us something can't be done." Spark nodded solemnly, understanding something fundamental about the strange species that had shown him such unexpected kindness. As the Dragon Queen and her son vanished into hyperspace, Emma turned to Alexander with a grin. "So," she said, "just another day at the office?" Alexander chuckled, already turning back to his quantum drive project. "Pretty much, though I should probably update my resume. Interstellar Dragon Wing Specialist has a nice ring to it." In the vast darkness of space, word began to spread among the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy. Humanity had earned the friendship of the void dragons. And in a universe full of wonders and terrors, there were few allies more valuable than those who could swim between the stars themselves. Alexander never did finish calibrating that quantum drive. He was too busy fielding requests from species he'd never heard of, all wanting to know if the human engineer who could repair impossible wings might be able to fix their impossible problems too. The answer invariably was yes, because that's what humans do.